Hi, I'm Julian Vasquez Heilig. I'm Dean of the University of Kentucky College of Education and a professor of Educational Policy Studies and Evaluation. I also serve as the Education Chair for the Kentucky NAACP. I want to congratulate you for actually listening to this video about critical race theory instead of just commenting about it. What I want to tell you is that, after George Floyd, I think the nation had a reawakening moment. We know that historically marginalized communities have often faced discrimination, whether it be in housing, opportunity to access education, differences in funding between their schools and in different neighborhoods, redlining, policing, criminal justice. This is critical race fact. It's not even critical race theory. But what critical race theory comes from is the desire for academics, specifically and first in the legal field, to study how race, gender, and other historically marginalized groups were treated in the law, how discrimination was codified. Now back to that watershed moment. When George Floyd passed away, the nation started to grapple with these issues of race, especially race as related to policing in the criminal justice system. I think what's been really unfortunate is that after that event, the conversation turned to, let's not talk about that event in our curriculum. Let's not talk about race. Let's not talk about discrimination. Let's reframe the reasons for the Civil War. And I think that's a real challenge because as an education dean, it's very important that we train social studies teachers and other educators to teach from history, to teach from fact, to teach from primary sources. And what critical race theory allows us to do is think about history from the lens of race, lens of gender, and other historically marginalized communities. It's an important tool in research. I myself have used critical race theory in my own research. For example, we published an article in the Harvard Education Review in 2012 that used critical race theory to examine social studies standards. What standards are is each state has a set of things that they want children to learn. These things became high stakes because those standards were then linked to tests. Those tests were then linked to grading, grades, ratings for schools and districts, and even teachers in some places. And so what is in the social studies and history standards was high stakes. And what we found using critical race theory as a lens was that the history of communities of color was either absent, as in the case of Asian Americans and Native Americans, and or made optional, primarily for African Americans and Latinos. That's what critical race theory does for us. It allows us to use race as a lens when we're using methods of analysis and methods of research. And finally, I'd like to say that being a public scholar and making your work more readily available to communities is very, very important. In fact, the name of my blog, Cloaking Inequity, which I talked a little bit about in my conversation about my favorite teacher, is an homage to critical race theory and talks specifically about the concept of camouflage. And what that concept alludes to is that often in public policy, that the inequality is hidden in codified public policy, that discriminatory intent is often hidden. And so therefore, I write the blog, Cloaking Inequity, to uncloak the inequities that are hidden in education and public policy. So again, thanks for listening. This is just my perspective on how critical race theory is so very important in the work that we do in public scholarship and in service of the public as academics and researchers.